you're going to season that water like the sea. Anybody ever been to the beach, to the ocean? Yeah? What does the water taste like? Really salty, right? Right? I was taught young when I was chef I had one of my first chefs said, make sure it tastes like the sea. The reason why is because that's going to help flavor the veg that you're blanching, and it's also going to help with the cooking of it, okay? All right, so you want to salt that water pretty heavily, so it's pretty salty. That doesn't mean the veg is going to pick it all up, it just means it's going to help pick up some of that flavor. So you're going to take that pot, you're going to bring it to a boil. I have a container with a strainer, or it could be a slotted spoon, all right? I have a mixing bowl, right? I believe all they're going to ask you to do is take the veg, blanch it, and then take and season it with some butter, salt, pepper, a little bit of herbs, okay? And then plate it. It might be where you're going to saute it. And when you saute it, all you're doing is the same thing, but you're just heating it back up. So we're not going to shock it because we're going to serve it right away, okay? All right? Okay, so I have that ready to go while that's heating up. Now, my green beans, really simple. Two sides. One's got a little bit of a point, and one is like the end that the stem comes off of, right? So we want to pick off the stem, or what you can do is you can just take and just slice off a little bit of that top. Okay, if the bottom looks good, leave that just like that, okay? If it looks like it's kind of, you know, because they kind of get, like, they start to go bad from the outside in a lot of times, green beans, okay? Cut off a little bit section if it doesn't look so good, okay? You want to kind of just clean up all your green beans so they're all nice and kind of cleaned up, all right? And that. As far as the carrots go, the carrots you're going to want to take and you're going to peel your carrot. Okay. You could peel this onto plastic wrap or have a little container for your scraps, right? Okay. But you want to keep yourself clean and organized kind of as you go, right? All right. And I don't know how they're going to tell you to cut it, but if I was serving green beans like that, I would probably take my carrots and I would do one of two things. I could either cut like rondeaux, which are round circles, all the same size, or I could cut it in half and then cut basically thin, just on an angle, like kind of half moons. But all the same size. Why do I want them to be all the same size? Yes.
That way they cook evenly?
So they cook evenly, yep. Now, we're blanching green beans and we're blanching carrots. Are they going to cook at the same time? No. Okay, and that's why we do blanch vegetables, because you can't just throw things together, okay? So carrots are actually going to take longer than the green beans to cook to get to that al dente. So once that water comes to a boil, I'm going to drop my carrots in there, and I'm going to cook them until they're kind of still firm, but soft enough that we can bite them and eat them, right? They shouldn't be mushy, but they also shouldn't be like a carrot stick that you would put with, you know, buffalo wings and ranch, okay? All right, so once I do that, then I'm going to pull them out, put my green beans in, same thing. Add it to there, okay? So while I'm waiting for that, I'm gonna move forward a little bit here, and I'm gonna go to my chicken, okay? So my chicken, this is skin on, boneless chicken breast, okay? I've dried it already, because at drying it, you don't wanna have that moisture on it as much as you can, because that moisture is gonna, one, pop and sizzle too much to make, you know, that's when you get that big, like, oil and water don't like each other cook. Plus it's going to give me a nice crispier skin as it's cooking, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first side and I am going to pretty heavily season the skin with salt. Okay? Now, this is more than most of you probably would, and you think, oh, it's going to be salty. Well, actually, what's going to happen is as we cook it, some of that salt's going to come off, but it's also going to help bring out some of that moisture, and it's going to help crisp up that skin, okay? You want to try to pull that skin to cover as much of that chicken breast as you can, okay? So, I'm going to put it on here. I like to use the heat, so I'm going to go to like 285 on here, or a medium heat if I was using the stove, okay? I'm going to take my oil. Once again, just like the rice we talked about, we're going to put oil and some butter. Reason again is because flavor, and we want to try to keep that butter from burning, okay? So I'm going to get that to start to heat up. Is that water boiling over there? No? Okay. All right. So while that is heating up, I can take my herbs here. I've got some onion and garlic already chopped. I don't want to chop my herbs until I'm cooking. Anybody know why? Thomas?
Because they bruise and kind of leak out the flavor.
Yeah, they're going to start to brown and bruise, okay? So you really want to chop them kind of last, right before you're making the dish. You don't really want to chop them the day before or anything, okay? So we just have some parsley here, and then some tarragon. Tarragon's just kind of got a little bit of that flavor of little licoricey kind of, but not super strong, okay? It's not going to be as strong as black licorice, but it's going to give you some flavor. Put that together. Okay, my pan is starting to bubble, sear, right? So I'm going to take my chicken breast, and I'm always going to go skin side down, right? And you want to make sure you're just kind of carefully placing that down. Okay, carefully placing it down, kind of move it a little bit. And then I'm going to take the bottom, now the top, or the bottom, and I'm going to season that a little bit more with salt. Not as much, but just still season good. And on the bottom, I'm going to put a little bit of pepper, because I'm going to present this up, and I don't like to see like a bunch of specks of pepper in my nice chicken breast as I'm presenting, okay? But I like the flavor of it, so I want to season it with that a little, okay? So I'm going to let that cook. If you notice your pan's getting a little hot, slow it down, okay? This process takes some time. If you've ever rendered fat on chicken, or especially duck, duck tends to have a thicker, bigger piece of fat. You have to render that kind of real slow. Because the best thing about chicken skin is that crispy, real crispy skin, right? The worst thing about chicken skin is that uncooked, kind of flabby skin, right? Why do we like chicken wings? Because they're fried nice and crispy, right? You know, fried chicken, nice and crispy. But if you ever eaten like you know, roasted or boiled chicken where the skin is like, it's no good, okay? So we want to cook that down kind of slow, all right? I can kind of peek at it. If I were to peek at this right away, what would happen is it would stick, and we don't want it to stick, right? A lot of times people like to touch it too much. When you touch it in the chicken or whatever you're cooking, it hasn't had a chance to caramelize and release from the pan. Is that boiling? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our carrots. We're going to just drop our carrots in there. Probably like 4 or 5 minutes, if that. You notice it's not going as much. You can go a little higher on the heat, okay? Because you want to create a nice golden kind of crust. All right, on a pan sauce, what we're trying to do is we're going to try to utilize what is called when we talked about stock, anybody remember? The fond. It's that little bits of little flavor that's in that pan, right? We want to use that. But if this burns, can we use it? No, because you're going to have burnt flavor in your sauce, right? So, by chance, you cook this, right? And it is burning. Instead of taking this pan, sacrifice losing a little flavor by starting over with a new pan for the sauce, right? Because if it's burning, it's going to create a burnt flavor, which is, you can't get rid of that flavor. It's not something that we want to enjoy. Okay? Okay, you see how it's starting to crisp up pretty nice? We're going to let it go a little bit longer, and then we're going to finish this actually in the oven on a sheet tray, okay? So while that's kind of cooking, I'm going to start a little bit of my pan sauce here. So I'm going to take my garlic, my shallots, okay? I'm just going to start to sweat that down a little bit into that, a little bit of that oil and the butter. And that'll actually start to help you start to deglaze, which we're going to talk about what deglazing is. Okay, then you're going to kind of flip it when it gets kind of crispy, flip it on its other side. You can kind of push it around with this, and this is, you're also going to use that other side to kind of deglaze the bottom of the pan. You're just taking some of that chicken flavor and helping you kind of change that texture that we're trying to get. All right. So once you've cooked it on both sides, you've got a nice crispier side. We're going to pull this out. Okay. All right. I'm going to take this and I'm going to throw it in an oven. Okay. What temperature am I going to cook that to? Chicken.
165?
165, but I'm not going to cook it to 165 because it's going to do what? It's going to carry over. So I want to pull it out at like 150, 155 degrees and let it carry over. Okay? So now I'm going to actually take some of my chicken stock. I'm going to pour it in there, and I'm going to start to deglaze. And deglaze is to try to remove all that stuff. But I need to check my carrots. The good news for you is you won't have vegetables going at the same time, right? Okay? So I'm going to take my veg. Okay. I can take a tasting spoon. I can tell that I might have went on some of this even a little bit over, but we're still fine. Okay. So I'm gonna put that on my butter there. Take my green beans. Drop them in there, okay? Now, I have my sauce here, right? And now I want to make sure when we're making the pan sauce, there really isn't a measurement I could give you that says perfect amount of stock, because what happens is, depending on how high your heat is, the quicker it's going to evaporate. If this was just water, it would steam off and then there would be left with nothing, right? But with it being stock, it's actually going to cook down, and it's going to start to cook down to where it's going to almost look like, remember we talked about the term nappe? That's like that back of the spoon, right? okay? So we want to kind of cook this down until it's nappe. If it's too thick, by chance, what do we do to it?
Add water or add stock.
Or add more stock, right? I always would measure more stock than they tell you, just to have it, right? So you're always going to have more than what you need, okay? So I'm going to let this continue to cook down. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. I know that my stock is a little bit weak because it's just stock, right? So I'm going to hit it with a little bit of base. And I'm going to continue to reduce that down. Now, my green beans, all right, they're not going to take very long to cook. You're going to come over here and make sure you're checking where you're at. I'll grab one with a tong, then you can kind of snap it or, you know, kind of taste where you're at, okay? So they're good. Got some of that butter in there, right? I'm going to throw a little bit of herbs in there. Touch my. You got to watch out that your heat doesn't go off when you're moving these pans. So sometimes you have to make sure you're really keeping an eye on it so it's on there. Because my heat just went out a little bit. A little bit of salt, right? A little bit of pepper, okay? All right, now, you're going to plate this, 2 portions of it separately, all right? But the key is, you still, even though it's just veg, if I'm doing this for the certification or whatever else, right? I still want it to do what? I still want it to look nice, right? So I'm going to try to line my green beans up kind of nicely, right? I'm going to take some of my carrots, kind of maybe lean a few here. Right? You're kind of just, you know, creating, you know, a little bit of, you know, height and just a little finesse to that. You know, I might take just a little bit of greens, you know, herbs and put on top of that like that for the green, for your veg, okay? All right, so my sauce is starting to get to the point where if I kind of check it, it's going to start to get a little bit more syrupy and nappe. Kind of come over to my chicken and kind of look at it, making sure to see where I'm kind of at with that. Right, thermometer, obviously for you guys, because you're not so aware of kind of like touch, you know. Okay, so once this is reduced down to where it's kind of got like that, you can tell it's not so liquidy as much, it's more of a little bit of a syrup. What we can do is we're going to then take some of our cream. We're going to add a little cream to this, kind of swirl that around. Could take a little bit of butter and just kind of make sure you kind of swirl that for flavor, and it also gets some shine and a little bit of shine to the sauce. It's called mounting with the butter at the end of a sauce. Okay, but you really don't want to like make this rapidly boil, because what can happen is if you walk away from this and it's boiling, it could separate on you. Okay, but if it does get too thick, once again, you're just adding a little bit of stock or a little bit of cream to it, right? Now, little trick. 1 spoon to taste, 1 spoon to dip, right? Okay? So, put 1 spoon there, 1 spoon here. This is always my tasting spoon, right? Okay? All right? All right, I'm gonna check my temperature of my chicken. Pretty sure I'm there for sure. But you're gonna wanna put it obviously into the thickest part of the chicken, right? Okay. And I'm even a little bit on the higher end, okay? So I wanna get this out. Right? You want to make sure you're keeping your station nice and clean, using your bus tub if you already have one underneath, okay? At this point I can take my herbs, put a bunch of my herbs in here, right? Okay. I can check, if you want to check a consistency before you put it on your plate that you're actually plating on, you can kind of check how it runs on there, right? Okay. Okay. Probably, obviously gloves are a good idea when you're plating. Or for sure, obviously utensils. And I know I'm going to touch this chicken a little bit because I'm going to actually slice it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, I don't like to put my sauce like on top of the chicken. So I'm going to take a little bit of my sauce, kind of put it on the plate. Okay, and then I'm going to take my chicken breast, okay, and I'm going to take, and I put the glove on the wrong hand, chicken down, and like that, okay. If you had a little bit extra herbs, maybe you would place a little bit of herbs on there, but that is how you would present your chicken and your veg, okay? Your rice, what you would do is you would just take and